Hello, welcome to the Botanical Gardens of Sheffield. Today we're going to be giving you a tour of all of the lovely plants and animals that inhabit this nature park. For instance, look at these animals. No, don't actually film them. Look at all these. The humans have gathered in the Botanical Gardens of Sheffield.
Hey, what is SHORE?
SHORE is the Sheffield Undergraduate Research Experience thing, which is essentially an opportunity for undergraduates like myself to get paid for doing research. Makes sense. I am a undergraduate in the Department of Computer Science, which at the University of Sheffield, and my research project has been to do with diagnosing and recording data on sleep apnea. So sleep apnea is essentially the outcome of being unable to breathe properly during sleep. And a lot of people have it and don't know, because when you're sleeping you're unconscious. So there's quite a need for a decent method of diagnosing people. The problem is, the current way that diagnosis happens in hospitals is a method called polysomnography, which is a nice long word. It's a nice long word that means you go sleep in hospital, in a sleep clinic, for 2 or 3 nights, and they strap you into a torture machine. No, they strap you with a load of sensors. You've got microphones recording your sound, you've got motion sensors detecting how you're sleeping, you're wearing like pulse oximeters that detect the saturation of oxygen in your blood, and all sorts of stuff like that. And it's really uncomfortable. Currently, polysomnography is the gold standard of diagnosis and of data recording for sleep apnea. So there is a great demand for something which is smaller scale, far more accessible and comfortable to people, and doesn't disrupt your sleep. Because one of the issues of polysomnography is that your sleep gets disrupted by the new environment. You imagine if you had to go sleep in hospital for 3 days, the first 2 nights of sleep, you're not going to sleep very well. And so that data pretty much just gets thrown away, and it's a pretty wasteful method. So my project is to develop a smartphone application that pairs with a couple of different sensors and records your snoring and the kind of breathing, the respiration rate, as well as the pulse, the blood oxygen level with a wireless pulse oximeter, and hopefully provide a better method of diagnosis and just data measurement in the first place. The data is needed for decent stuff. Okay.
So what were you focusing on week 1 then?
Okay, week 1. It's difficult because all the memories kind of blur together. I've just finished week 2. I have 6 weeks total, so another 4 weeks to go. Week 1 was a lot of figuring out Android, because I'm developing on an Android smartphone. So it was a lot of figuring out the development software and trying to get access to the microphone was the main thing. So when you download a smartphone app, if you download it from the Play Store or something, you'll probably notice that it usually asks you for permissions. It'll ask whether you want to let this app record microphone noise, let it access the internet, let it read and write things from your storage. And so for an application which is not only recording your snoring noises through the night, but is also accessing Bluetooth to connect to these wireless motion sensors, accessing the internet to upload them to a web server which does the analysis, having to save them onto your SD card, there's a lot of permissions. And I was unfamiliar with all of this. So week 1 was largely the process of establishing that and getting used to that and getting it working. Then also the main problem I had to tackle over kind of week 1 to the start of week 2 period was there's a technique known as double buffering. Imagine if you have 2 buckets and you are filling them from a tap with water. You can imagine that the tap is like the audio that's being recorded from the microphone, right? The water that comes out of the tap is all your precious audio, all that lovely snoring, sleeping sounds. You don't want to miss a drop. So you fill up this bucket, you fill it, and then you kind of go over and dump it into a pool. And that's known as dumping to an output stream. The pool is this file that you're filling with audio, right? And then you'll be able to diagnose that, and you'll be able to assess that later. The problem is, whilst you're filling this bucket with all this audio, once it gets nice and full, the time it takes you to walk over and dump it into the pool, you're missing all the audio which is going on here. And so if you come back and you fill it again, you're going to have a massive gap in the audio. And that gap is terrible, it's not what we want at all. So the technique I was working on was for double buffering essentially implies having 2 buckets rather than 1. The idea is that you're filling your first bucket with water, and once it gets full, then kind of like a Newton's cradle, you smack it out the way, and now you're filling the second bucket with water. And then you can go and dump this into your pool at your leisure, and you can bring it back, and by the time you bring it back, this one's getting a bit full, and then you swap it out again, and then you can dump that one into the pool. And so you're never missing a drop, you're always having some output stream. And so in parallel, whilst one is filling, the other one is being emptied, the file is being written to, and everything's working nicely. So getting that working was a bit of a pain. That was something that took quite a while, quite a few days. But I think I have it working. Hard to tell. The other main issue that I've been working on the past 2 weeks is trying to record sensors simultaneously. So not only am I having to double buffer the audio, but there's also a motion sensor. We have a wireless motion sensor about the size of a 2p coin. The idea of which is to have it sit on your chest while you're sleeping. Nice and kind of slimline. It's only a couple of centimeters big, a couple of centimeters thick. And it kind of sits here, and as you breathe during the night, the idea is that it goes up and down and it measures the acceleration of your chest. And so from that, combining the microphone and the motion sensor, it's a good way to try and get a decent a fusion of the two. But recording them simultaneously is difficult, because not only is your tap with your audio and your bucket, not only are those drips happening at a certain rate, your motion sensor is recording audio or recording motion data at an entirely different rate. That could be like a really rapid stream of sensor, or a really slow kind of gradual stream of data. And so syncing those up to make sure that once this bucket gets swapped out, your motion sensor bucket also gets swapped out at the same time is quite difficult. And it involves some careful pre-processing to ensure that everything happens simultaneously. The third sensor we're using, is a wireless pulse oximeter, which is something that I'm really excited to be using, because it's a little rubber thing that just sits on your finger. It illuminates your finger, and there's a sensor on the other side of whatever light is shining at your finger, which detects the color of your finger, right? And the color changes depending on how saturated your blood is with oxygen. Oxygen saturation is like the important thing to record for sleep apnea, because whilst you're suffering and struggling to breathe at night, you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain. So recording the amount of oxygen in your blood is like crucial for diagnosis. So it's really lucky we've managed to find an open source, a wireless pulse oximeter which we can get the data from. And so it sits on your finger, and it goes to this little thing which kind of sits on your arm, and then the little thing on your arm is sending data to the phone constantly. So trying to sync up the wireless motion sensor on your chest, the pulse oximeter on your arm, along with the phone's own microphone is a bit of a problem. It's something that requires a bit of work. So that's what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks, and it's gone pretty well. I've managed to get most of the things working. Alongside all that, I've been needing to do app development, just kind of the UI of the smartphone itself, and trying to make sure that it's nice and easy to use, because in the coming few weeks, I'm going to have to test out everything I've written, all this lovely code I've made. I'm going to have to test it on volunteers, and the volunteers, for them to have any motivation to actually do the test, need to have a nice, easy, unambiguous user interface to use. Otherwise, why are they going to use it? So working on the user interface has been something that's been really important. I think it's gone very well. There's been a few hiccups here and there, but overall it's gone quite nicely. And yeah, that was the first 2 weeks of my shore project. And I'm hopeful for the future. I think it's going to go really well. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then I have many more videos like it. Probably somewhere here. You can support me on Patreon for more videos, or you can donate on streamlabs.com/HRCgaming, whatever you like, as long as you enjoy the videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Today we'll be taking an in-depth look at the humans of Sheffield. Look at them flock for the plant sale of a lifetime. Here, the indigenous species of Yorkshire men and Yorkshire women congregate to buy plants and to tell other people that they went to buy plants. In this extended look at the Botanical Gardens of Sheffield, we shall attempt to empathize and relate with these strange beings.